everybody, I'm Samurai Sam. This is episode 3 of going through my collection and showing you every single game. Today I'm going to do loose NES carts. This is going to be a lot more of the lesser known NES games. The library is actually really big, so those of you who grew up with like Mario and Zelda and stuff might have thought, oh, that's all there is to NES. Well, actually there's way more to NES than just the Marios and the Zeldas of the world. And there are going to be a few big heavy hitters in here, but a lot of these are going to be games you've never heard of if you're that type of gamer or someone who used to play games. And there's a lot of these here to get through, so I'm going to try and make my descriptions nice and brief and try to get through this all in one shot. So let's go. Without further ado, we start with A Boy and His Blob. This is a game where you have, it's a side-scrolling game, but it's like kind of a puzzle game too, because you have like this pet blob and he can like transform into different things, and there are clues as to like what transformations can help you where, and it's a cool game, but it also has issues with being a little bit hard to figure out at times. We've got Abadox. This is a shoot 'em up. Like one of those games where you like fly around and shoot things and dodge a lot of bullets, and like one hit and you're dead and you get power-ups and stuff. Abadox, I really like Abadox a lot, but it gets really hard, and it's one of those shoot 'em ups that suffers from when you lose all your power-ups. It's really hard to progress in the later levels, so that can be an issue. We have Adventure Island 2, and then we also have Adventure Island 3, and these are very much like the first Adventure Island, I think. Like, at least in terms of the basic component of, like, it's a side-scroller platformer, you have to keep moving because you'll get hungry and die if you don't. These two games add to the formula by adding stuff like animal friends that give you additional powers and stuff, and they seem like really cool games. I'm 100% going to play them, I just haven't yet. We have Anticipation, which is a board game, and it's kind of like, this is a good game for, like, 4 people or so. It's a game where there's a drawing. I forget if, like, the players themselves do the drawings, or if that's just the computers does it and you have to guess. It's been a while since I played it, but basically it's sort of a Pictionary type of thing, I think, and it's fun. Good multiplayer game. We've got Archon, which is like mystical chess, kind of. You got 2 sides, and you take turns like a chessboard, but like when the 2 pieces face each other, you actually like fight. You go to a different screen, and the 2 characters battle each other, and different pieces have different attributes, and it's a fun game for 2 players. We have Arkanoid, which I mentioned before. This is very much like Breakout for Atari and arcade, and only this adds a lot of stuff to the formula, like enemies and like power-ups and stuff, and it's really cool. The only problem is that you really need like a specific trackball controller to really enjoy this version of the game, and I don't have it. It's kind of expensive, and apparently it kind of breaks easily, so I don't know if I'll ever have it, but I do have Arkanoid on other systems that are more friendly to playing without that controller, so that's not that big of a deal. We have Astyanax, which is a side-scroller action game, and you're this dude with an axe, and you use magic. Seems like a decent game, although I'm not sure I'm going to keep this game, honestly, because it's good, but like I'm not sure if I'm actually going to ever find time to really play it. I don't think it really stands out to me enough. We have next game is Bad News Baseball, which is a cool baseball game. I don't think it has a whole lot of modes, if I remember right, but it's like good, solid baseball game with some sense of humor and some animations and cartoony characters that are fun. Good for 2 players. We've got Balloon Fight, one of Nintendo's classic games. This is a lot like the arcade game Joust, where you're basically like flying with a balloon. Like you have a character like with balloons attached to his back, and you flap your arms to go higher and such. And you have to pop all the enemies' balloons. And you can play 2 players, and you're kind of on a team, but also kind of competing for your own scores. And I think it's a lot of fun. There's also another mode where you're called Balloon Trip, where you're trying to go as far as you can without dying, and that's fun. We have Barker Bill's Trick Shooting, which is a Zapper light gun game. That's right, it's not just Duck Hunt that used the Zapper. This game also used it, and I played there's a few different like little games you can do with the Zapper, and I think they're all pretty fun. I've played all 4 of them, or I think there's 4. I think there's like 3 or 4, and then there's one that combines all the rest of them. But yeah, cool game, definitely worth it if you have the Zapper. We have Baseball Stars by SNK. This is considered one of the best baseball games on the system. It's got like a whole season mode and everything, and you can like customize your players and stuff. It's a good, solid baseball game if you like baseball games. More baseball. We have Bases Loaded 2. One thing that sets the Bases Loaded series apart is that, compared to other games of this time anyway, is that the camera is actually behind the pitcher when you're batting rather than behind the batter, which is very different. And I haven't played these games a lot to give them a full review, though. That's the most distinguishing feature. Now we got a famous game here. We have Battletoads. This starts out kind of like a beat 'em up, kind of like the arcade games like Final Fight or Ninja Turtles. But like, there's a lot of variety in gameplay. The different levels are pretty different from each other. There's this Turbo Tunnel level, which is very famous slash infamous because it's so difficult. Where like you're riding in this machine and there's these obstacles that keep coming at you, and it's really hard to dodge if you don't know what's coming. It's a fun game. It's one of the hardest NES games on a system full of hard games. I don't know if I'll ever beat it. I might want to like take on that challenge someday, but I have not yet. Batman, this is a really good licensed game. I think it's mostly based on a movie that came out around that time. I don't know. But really solid side-scrolling action game with cool power-ups and weapons and stuff. Definitely get this if you like Batman. And even if you don't like Batman, you might enjoy it because it's that good. You have Blades of Steel, a hockey game by Konami. Good, solid hockey game for even people who don't like hockey can probably enjoy this. And some homages to other Konami games during halftime, which is really cool. Some voice samples as well, which kind of amusing, but get repetitive kind of quick. We have Blaster Master, a pretty popular game, which is kind of it has a variety of gameplay. There's some side-scrolling moments, and then there's some top-down overhead dungeons to get through. And there's you ride a tank generally for the side-scrolling levels, and then you get out of your tank for the top-down levels, and you get some power-ups and stuff, and it's pretty fun. And it's kind of mazy sometimes. It can be difficult to figure out where to go if you don't have a map, but it's still pretty good. The problem with Blaster Master, there's no save games. No, you can't save your game. There's no password. We have Bubble Bobble, which is a famous arcade game by Taito. And basically, there's one screen at a time. You want to defeat all the enemies on the screen. You play as these little dinosaur dudes, and you can spit out bubbles and capture the enemies in the bubbles. And it's a good two-player co-op game. There's also another Bubble Ball game on NES that's super rare and expensive, and I'll probably never own it. We have Cabal. I think Cabal is like, if not a light gun game, it's one of those games where like you control a crosshair and you try to shoot things. If I'm wrong, then I'm probably mixing it up with something else, but I'm pretty sure that's what Cabal is. It's been a while. Actually, I think I fired this up not too long ago, but I'm struggling to remember exactly specifically what it is. Clash at Demon Head is a side-scrolling action/platformer game that has some story elements, some cutscenes, and also branching path gameplay where like there's like a bunch of levels you can kind of go like when you beat level 1 you can go to level 2 or level 3, and then you beat level 2 you can go to either level 4 or level 5, but if you beat level 3 you can go to either like level 5 or level 6, that kind of progression, and it's pretty cool. I believe the movie Scott Pilgrim like had a band named after that game or something like that. We have Cobra Triangle, which is like you ride in a boat. I think it's from like an isometric point of view, and I think it's a racing game. If not, it's like some kind of an action game. Like, it's not traditional. Like, it's not like supposed to be like a realistic sports game, as you can kind of probably tell by like the big monster there. Now we have Contra Force. Now, you know how much I love Contra 1 and Super C. This one is not as good as those. This was originally not going to be a Contra game, and then they kind of slapped the logo on it at the last second, and it's definitely not as good. Like, there's different playable characters that have different abilities, which is cool. The biggest problem with this game is that it runs poorly. Like, there's a lot of slowdown, and like a lot of times the action will just the system has trouble handling all the stuff that's on the screen, and it can bog down the experience a bit. Could have been a great game, but it's not really great. We have Crystallis from SNK. I have beaten this game. This is kind of Zelda-ish, but more RPG elements, like magic and leveling up and stuff, and it's pretty good. Some people really love this game. I thought it was good. I didn't think it was like the best one of the best NES games ever. I think I would rather play Zelda than this, but it's still pretty good. You got Darkwing Duck, obviously based on the Disney cartoon of the same name. This is a cool game. It's made by Capcom, and no surprise, it's similar to Mega Man, which we'll be getting to later. And really cool game. I haven't played it much, but I definitely want to. It seems like definitely worth playing. How many times can I say definitely? I don't know. Demon Sword, this is a platformer by Taito, and I don't remember too many other specifics other than that. You have a sword. It's a lot of games on the NES are like that. The classic Donkey Kong, the arcade game from 1981. This port, unfortunately, excludes one of the 4 levels, but otherwise it's pretty faithful and good game, like arcade game for going for your high scores. Donkey Kong 3, I actually don't have Donkey Kong Jr. for NES. I was never a hugest fan of Donkey Kong Jr. anyway, but Donkey Kong 3 is very different. You don't have Mario, you play as this dude named Stanley who has this bug spray kind of thing, and you're trying to spray Donkey Kong and his insect friends away from you. And it's a high-score arcade game. Double Dragon, a famous arcade beat-em-up game. Unfortunately, there's no 2-player in this version. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure it's a pretty good arcade port, considered a good game. I've always kind of had trouble doing well in Double Dragon, I think, but That's not uncommon. Double Dragon 2 is definitely better, and it has actual co-op. And this version was actually ramped up a lot from the arcade version. I'm pretty sure this is one of the best versions of the game. So I definitely should get a buddy and play that one sometime. There I go with definitely again. We have Double Dribble, which is a classic Konami sports game. It's kind of like, I guess you could say, an ancestor to NBA Jam. I think it's 2-on-2, if I remember right. Solid basketball game for NES. Dragon Spirit. Let's see if I can get the cartridge out here because the instruction book's in the way. This is a shoot 'em up, actually. It doesn't look like it. You would think this would be like a platformer or something, but no, it's a shoot 'em up, and a pretty good one. It's not too difficult either, unlike a lot of games on NES. We have Dragon Warrior, which is one of the biggest, most influential RPGs of all time. In Japan, this is known as Dragon Quest, and started a hugely popular series of that name over there, which it still has a good following here, but not nearly as popular as in Japan. This game, I mean, it hasn't aged the best, obviously. They've made a lot of improvements to the genre since this game was made. But I'm thinking of trying to play this at some point, just to for that experience. Very historically significant game there. Then Dragon Warrior 2, which has adds party members, whereas Dragon Warrior 1 you only have the main character. I actually, unfortunately, don't have Dragon Warrior 2. I'm sorry, I don't have Dragon Warrior 3 or 4 for NES. I have those on other systems. Then the big famous Duck Hunt, which uses the Zapper light gun. It's a lot of fun. You shoot ducks. You probably know the drill. You probably know what this game is. We have Excite Bike, which, let me pull this out. Another classic Nintendo game. For a long time, I didn't really appreciate this game, and that's because I didn't realize that the turbo button was there, and that's really what makes the game fun and interesting. It's like a side-scrolling racing game, and it's fun to play, and you can even design your own tracks, although sadly you cannot save them. We have Foxanadu, I don't know exactly what's the right pronunciation, but this is kind of an RPG, sort of Metroid-y even, I think, if I remember right. I've played some of it, but not all the way through. A lot of people really like this game. It has some, what I would say, are design flaws that are common from the era. Some really good music. Fester's Quest, Addams Family game, obviously. Kind of a top-down shooter kind of game from an overhead view. And it's got some flaws, but if you like Addams Family, you'll probably like this. Some people like this game, some people hate it. I haven't really played enough to give my own opinion. Ghosts and Goblins by Capcom. This is a famous game. Famous particularly for its high difficulty. It was originally an arcade game. Actually, it was pretty... I don't know if revolutionary is the right word, but it was kind of impressive when it first came out in arcades. Not many games were like side-scrollers like this back then. But this game just has such a brutal difficulty. It kind of limits how much fun you can have with it. But, it's kind of one of those so hard it can be fun to see how far you can get kind of things, I think. Golf, very early Nintendo game, kind of basic. It's golf. You actually play from an overhead view rather than behind your golfer like in most golf games. Go-Go 13, which is based on an anime. This is one of the first adult-oriented Nintendo games. There weren't that many. I mean, Nintendo back then was more of a marketed to kids, so that was kind of unusual. We have Gotcha the Sport, which is a game that you can play with a light gun, and you try to shoot stuff. I forget exactly how it works. I think you have to shoot a certain number of things per level or something like that. Whoopsie. We have Guerrilla War, which is a arcade game from SNK, where overhead view, kind of like some of the other games that I've already looked at here. The game I just dropped on the floor was Gumshoe, another early Nintendo game, but not really that well known. It's a zapper game, but it's unusual because rather than trying to shoot everything, you actually shoot the dude here moving across the screen to make him jump to try to get through the game. It's really difficult, but it's also kind of neat. You have Gunsmoke from Capcom. This looks like it would be like an action game, but it's actually like a shoot 'em up, kind of like one of those space shooters like Abadox from earlier. You have to you play as this dude who's like a cowboy, and he's constantly moving. You can't stop him. So it's a shoot 'em up, full-fledged shoot 'em up, and you have to get in the stage. You have to find a wanted poster in order to finish the stage and call out the bad guy. Gyromite. This uses Rob the Robot, which why do I not have Rob the Robot? I should totally get Rob the Robot. But you try to get this guy through these levels, and you're supposed to use Rob the Robot to do that. But you can also use just a second player controller. This is signed by Pat Country, the NES punk, who I bought it from at a convention. We've got Hogan's Alley, which is another early Nintendo game, Zapper game, really fun. There's 3 different modes you can do, and one of them, they often involve there's bad guys you're supposed to shoot, and then civilians that you're not supposed to shoot. And a lot of the game is trying to react really fast while not shooting the people you're not supposed to shoot, and I really like that challenge. It's a good game. Ice hockey. This is another early sports game, and the main reason why I have this is because at one of Pat Contry's panels, I got to play this in front of everybody. I was chosen for the NES challenge or whatever it's called, and so that kind of gave me a memorable experience with that game. Iron Sword, Wizards and Warriors 2. This is a platformer that I haven't played a whole lot. We got Jackal, which is a vehicular top-down action game from Konami. It's very good. Good for co-op. Another bases-loaded game here. The reason why it's this far into the stack of games, I guess you'd call it, is because the end label actually says Jalico, which is the company, not the game. It's very unusual. We have Jeopardy, which is, of course, Jeopardy. There's no Alex Trebek in this, but it's a pretty solid version of the game show. Fun to play with people. And Jeopardy 25th Anniversary Edition. We have Karnov, which is a Data East arcade game where you're this funny-looking dude and you actually shoot things and stuff, and it's cool. I haven't played it a lot. Next game is Kid Icarus, another famous Nintendo game, mostly known really for the more recent, Smash Brothers and the more recent Kid Icarus game. But this one is a platform where you're actually ascending upwards, and it's really difficult. But then after that, the game changes. There's actually a lot of variety of gameplay in this. I've never beaten it. I have made it past the very difficult first stages, though, so at some point I'll finish it. King's Knight is a shoot-'em-up from Squaresoft, of all companies, who later became more well-known for Final Fantasy. I haven't played it a whole lot myself. Kung Fu Heroes is like an arcadey top-down action game. I think you're trying to beat up all the characters in one stage at a time or something like that, and it's a good co-op game. Legacy of the Wizard is very much like Fox on a Do, which I told you about earlier. I think kind of that vein of game, kind of RPG-ish, a lot of wandering around and solving puzzles. We got Legendary Wings, which is a shoot 'em up from Capcom, where instead of playing a spaceship, you're an angel dude. We have Life Force from Konami, classic arcade shoot 'em up, really well done. There's some vertical and horizontal stages, which is unusual. Most shooters are one or the other. I actually don't have NES Gradius. It's not my favorite version of the game, so I don't feel a need to have that. If you're wondering why Gradius wasn't here, that's why. We've got Lolo 2, and then we have Lolo 3, and they're action puzzle games. I already talked about Adventures of Lolo in the previous video. Low G-Man is a platformer where, surprise, surprise, low gravity. MC Kids is a McDonald's tie-in Super Mario Brothers-esque game, and it seems to be pretty good. I haven't played a lot of it, but it seems like it's pretty solid. Mach Rider, yeah, it's Mach Rider, it's not Mach. Mach Rider is a kind of a racing yet vehicular combat game from Nintendo, where you're racing and you're on a motorcycle and you're trying to collect fuel, I think, to keep going, but you can also shoot, so it's not traditional. I guess F-Zero is a better idea of a futuristic racer than that. Mach Rider is not really... Mach Rider! Stop saying that. Mach Rider is not really considered a classic, I don't think. We got Maniac Mansion, which is a point-and-click game from LucasArts, I believe. And this has a very good reputation, good characters and humor and stuff. I haven't played it a lot myself, but I want to. We have Mario Brothers. Now, this is not Super Mario Brothers. This is something different. This is the arcade game that came before Super Mario Brothers, where... you're trying to eliminate all the enemies one stage at a time. This is a game where Luigi made his debut. It's a solid co-op game, good for going for high scores. We have Mechanized Attack, which is another game where you can use the light gun. And yeah, you shoot things. That's probably all I need to say about that. Now, very famous classic here. We got Mega Man with its very weird North American box art. Mega Man 1 has some really good music, but is definitely a little rougher on the edges. Level of quality wasn't quite where it got to later in the series, but that's not too surprising. Mega Man 2 is considered by most to be the best Mega Man game. Me personally, I actually think it's kind of overrated. There's some game design flaws, I think, that hold it back for me. But I can't deny that the music is really, really good. It's probably the best on the entire system. And then Mega Man 5, which I like Mega Man 5 a lot. It's got some neat stages, and I like the advancements they made in the series, the gameplay additions they made after Mega Man 2, so I enjoy that kind of thing in Mega Man 5. And then we have Mendel Palace, which is another arcadey, top-down, action game, but this one's a little different. I think you're trying to, if I remember right, you have to, flip the panels on the floor or something. You have to flip them all or in a certain way to beat the stage. Seems like a solid co-op game. We have Metal Storm from IREM, which is a cool action platformer game where the main distinguishing feature is that you can like flip gravity at will. So like you can make it so your character's standing on the ceiling and then press a button and then he flips down to the floor, and it makes for really cool and unique gameplay. We have Micro Machines. This is an unlicensed cartridge by Codemasters. It's a top-down racing game, and like you play as like these little toy cars on different like everyday household racetracks, like a breakfast table or like a living room and stuff. And it's a cool game and fun for multiple players. Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, very famous game. Unlike, it's not really like a realistic boxing sim like you might expect. It's actually kind of like a puzzle game even, because like every boxer kind of has their own pattern, and you have to memorize the pattern and learn how to beat them before. Yeah, really, like it's just a matter of like memorization and reaction time, and a lot of like colorful characters and such, and a very famous fight at the end that's difficult with Mike Tyson himself. Monopoly, I'm actually pretty fond of this version of Monopoly. Part of that is probably nostalgia because this is one of my first NES games, but it's a pretty solid rendition of the board game and good for multiplayer. Monster in My Pocket. This is actually licensed tie into like a toy line of the same name around that time. It seems like a pretty solid action game by Konami. We have Ms. Pac-Man. This is actually unlicensed Ms. Pac-Man. There was like a licensed version, and this is completely different. They actually rebuilt this from the ground up instead of porting the arcade version over, and this is really good because they added all kinds of cool features to this home version that weren't in the arcade version, and that gives you a lot more value, more content, and it's a really good version of the game. NES Open Tournament Golf. This is probably the best golf game on the system. It even has like a career mode or something with save. You can save your game and such, and definitely worth it if you like golf and NES. We have Nightshade, which is this a point and click? I think this might be like a point and clicky kind of game, but I could be completely wrong about that. I really should play it myself and find out. I haven't had that one for very long. Ninja Gaiden, very famous game. One of the first games to really do cutscenes well, like really cool cinematic looking cutscenes in between levels and such with characters and a story playing out. This game is famous for like good play control, but brutally hard difficulty, some really unfair in some places, but considered a classic nonetheless. Then there's Ninja Gaiden 2, which is kind of more of the same, and then Ninja Gaiden 3 exists, but sadly I don't have it. Nintendo World Cup is probably the best soccer game on the system, and it's actually a Kunio-kun game, like one of those same series as River City Ransom, which we're going to get to in a little bit. We have North and South, which is like a cartoony Civil War-based kind of strategy game, kind of like, I think it's like in the vein of Command and Conquer if you've ever played that. Good two-player game. Got Palamedes, which is a cool little puzzle game, very weird cartridge because it kind of gives you some instructions on the cartridge, almost like one of those Atari games that we looked at earlier. Fun game for two players, basically like you're throwing dice up at the top of the screen and you're trying to like make sets that do things and mess up your opponent. Phantom Fighter, this is some kind of action game I think, but it's been a while since I fired it up and I don't exactly remember what it is. Pinball, this is another like old Nintendo, one of the oldest Nintendo games by Nintendo themselves. This is not like the best pinball game on the system or anything, but I have kind of a soft spot for it because probably nostalgia, and just I spent a lot of time with it and grew to appreciate it. We have Pinball Quest, which is different than most pinball games. Like they try to add like other gameplay elements in, like RPG-ish stuff, I think, and it's kind of neat. We have Pinbot, which is actually a port of a real pinball table that exists, and it's probably one of the better pinball games on the system. Power Blade by was this Taito? Wait, was this Taito who made this? Yeah, Taito. Side-scrolling action game, kind of a non-linear progression, kind of like Mega Man. You can kind of choose the order of the levels you want. This is a really good, fun game. There's two main problems with it. One, it's too easy, and two, the boss fights aren't very good. But it's a lot of fun to play. Pro Wrestling, another classic Nintendo. Wait, did Nintendo even make this? I don't know, but like one of the earliest sports-y games on Nintendo, and considered a classic. I haven't played it a whole lot myself, but it's a good two-player game. Then this is Punch-Out without Mike Tyson after Nintendo lost the rights to Mike Tyson. Rad Racer by Squaresoft before they made Final Fantasy games all the time. This is so good, decent racing game. One of those games I've played a lot of times, but never really like got that good at it or played it like all the way through. Then there's Rad Racer 2, which is kind of more the same, if I remember right, probably a little better. RBI Baseball was one of my earlier NES games, and this game was kind of like a pioneer. Like a lot of baseball games after that mimicked this game. because it's good, solid, fun, like simple, but like pretty well done. Characters are chibi, like cartoony looking, but it's real MLB teams like Boston and well, they don't have the names of the teams; it's just the cities. But like they have like the names of the players, which is cool. I really like RBI Baseball, and I have RBI Baseball 2, which goes for a little bit more realistic graphics. There is also an RBI Baseball 3 that I don't have. We have RC Pro-Am, which is a top-down racing game where you have like these remote control cars, and it's pretty good. Sadly, no multiplayer in this one. There should be, but there is an RC Pro-Am 2 that's rare and expensive, and I don't have it. Rescue Rangers, considered a classic platformer by Capcom based on the Disney property. This one can actually be played co-op, 2 players at a time, which is pretty cool. There's also a second game, but it's rare and expensive, and I don't have it. River City Ransom is a famous beat-em-up that has some RPG-ish elements. Part of what's called the Kunio-kun series in Japan. The graphics, this is a prime example of the graphics on the front, or rather the art on the front, being changed for the American release to look more like gritty, realistic, whereas in Japan it's more cartoony looking, and then you play the actual game, it's more cartoony as well. I haven't played a lot of River City Ransom, but I definitely want to. Road Blasters is like a racing game, but also like combat kind of game, kind of like Mach Rider or some other games we've mentioned. And yeah, you drive, but you can also shoot. Then we have Rolling Thunder. This is another unlicensed game by Tengen. And this is like a side-scrolling, I think this was an arcade game first, side-scrolling action game where you shoot things. Boy, am I saying that a lot. That was popular back then. We have Rygar by, this is Taito, right? If I'm remembering right. Rygar, I believe Rygar is a Taito game, right? Am I wrong? The Tecmo, I'm sorry, it's Tecmo, not Taito. But Rygar was originally an arcade game. This NES version, they completely revamped it instead of just porting the arcade game. This one is better. There's like branching paths and stuff, and a lot of levels, and it's a cool game. We have SCAT, Special Cybernetic Attack Team, which is a shoot 'em up where you have these 2 little options, these 2 little like robot thingies that like circle around you, and you can kind of like customize how they move. And it's a fun game and fun for 2-player co-op. Very good. It's a little bit short, but a lot of shoot 'em ups are short. Magic of Scheherazade, which is kind of unusual because it kind of blends Zelda with Final Fantasy kind of gameplay, because like there's action segments and then there's turn-based segments. It's a cool game. I intend to play it, but I haven't really played it much yet. Shatterhand is one of my favorite NES games of all time. This might even be one of my top 5. It was actually originally a licensed game in Japan, believe it or not. They changed it for the US release, but really, really good action game and a lot of variety because there's a ton of different power-ups, and the combination that you collect the power-ups determines what move you'll get, basically. And that's just a very brief description, but like non-linear progression is in this game. It avoids a lot of the frustrating tropes in a lot of NES games at the time, and it's just really well done. I recommend it. Sky Kid is a kind of, I guess you'd call it a shoot 'em up, but it's not fully a shoot 'em up. Like it's basically like a bombing simulator. You have to like progress through a level, not die, and then bomb a certain place. And I've had trouble getting into it whenever I've tried to play it. Snake Rattle and Roll is an isometric game. It's by Rare, I think, and yeah, it's an action game. You're the snake, and it's kind of like a platformer as well, I think. I think it's pretty difficult, but also pretty well designed and good. I don't think it's 2-player, but I could be wrong. Then we have Snake's Revenge, which is an unofficial sequel to Metal Gear that Hideo Kojima had no involvement in. This is not stealth-based really at all. It's more just straight-up run-and-gun action. And it's not the best game in the world, but it's kind of neat to have it as like a collector's piece. Solomon's Key was originally an arcade game, and it's basically you... there's a bunch of levels, like the levels are one screen at a time, and like you can like enchant, I think you can like create blocks or destroy blocks or something, and you're trying to find like the key in each level or something like that. I'm not describing it very well, but it seems like a pretty good game, and I want to spend more time with it. We have Solstice, which is like kind of an isometric, if you don't know what isometric is, I've been saying that, it's like from a diagonal point of view, that's what it means. Solstice is an isometric like dungeon crawling, I guess you'd call it that. Like kind of puzzle-solving game, but with some action too. Kind of like Zelda Dungeons, I guess you would say, but done in a different style. I'm probably doing a very bad job of describing these games. Stinger is part of the Twinbee series by Konami. This is the only Twinbee game we got in America that got a physical release. Most Twinbee games are vertical, but this one's horizontal. It's also 2-player. It's got a weird power-up system with the bells, where you have to like keep shooting the bells until it changes the color of the power-up you want. I haven't played a lot of Stinger. It's probably not as good as most of the other Trinity games. Super Dodgeball is another one of the River City Ransom / Kunio-kun series games, and it's good game, good like two-player game. You don't see a lot of dodgeball video games, but this is one of them, and it's well done. Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt. I've already talked about Super Mario Brothers and Duck Hunt, but this is like both of them on one cartridge. Then we have Mario Duck Hunt and World Class Track Meet. I don't have the trackpad to play World Class Track Meet, so unfortunately I can't give any commentary on that. Super Spike V-Ball is a volleyball game, and it's probably one of the better ones on the system. I don't think there's a lot of volleyball games, but I think there's a few, and that's considered like the best one. Tecmo Super Bowl is a very famous sports game. It's considered one of the best football games of all time. It's got kind of like a rock, paper, scissors kind of gameplay where like if you're on defense, you want to pick the same type of play as the offense to counter them, and it's addictive, and people hack the game to update the rosters every single year to this day. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is a pretty cool licensed game based on the famous series. Side-scrolling action where you play as the 4 different turtles. They're all slightly different. There's some issues with this one, like with certain levels being way too hard or whatever, but it does the license justice, and the music is really good. Then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game. This is much different than the one I just showed you. This is more just a straight arcade beat-em-up, and like most beat-em-ups, it's a little repetitive, but it is pretty good and does the series justice. Then Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, the Manhattan Project, which is even better than the second one. And then the next one on Super Nintendo is the best one. Tennis, another early Nintendo sports game. Pretty simple, does what it does pretty well. Sadly, no 2-player, which kind of sucks. Now we have Tetris by Nintendo, which of course needs no introduction. And then we also have Tetris by Tengen right here. So yeah, NES got 2 versions of Tetris. Most people consider the Tengen version the superior version, and they're probably right. The main reason being Tetris by Tengen has 2-player, while the standard NES version does not. But I have a soft spot for the NES Tetris, in part because I played it a lot. I also really like the music and the Game B mode, where you're trying to eliminate a certain number of rows per game. I think that's really addictive. I really enjoy it. But they're both really good versions I wouldn't want to be without. The unlicensed version, the Tengen version, also has a unique co-op mode where you're both controlling blocks and filling in the same stack together. Battle of Olympus is similar to Zelda 2, kind of like side-scrolling, action-y RPG type of game, and I haven't played it a lot, but it seems cool. We have The Goonies 2, which is based on the movie of the same name. And Goonies 2 is considered a good game. I haven't played it a lot, but it has a lot of side-scrolling action platformy segments, and also segments, I'll pick that up later, segments where you're going through these rooms and it switches to a first-person view, and that's kind of different. Tiny Toon Adventures, which is a pretty solid platformer, perfect for people who like the show, I suppose. To the Earth is a light gun game that has a reputation of being very, very difficult. I haven't played it a lot myself yet. Trog is a pretty cool Pac-Man style game. You know, you're going through mazes trying to eat all the dots, and there are enemies that are trying to eat you, literally, and you can get power-ups and eat them instead, and it's not a straight rip-off of Pac-Man. It's distinctly different. You can also play co-op, and it's a fun co-op game. We have Uninvited, which is, I think, a spiritual successor to Shadowgate, which we saw in the last episode. This is a point-and-click kind of game again, and I think it's considered to be pretty good. Vice Project Doom, I'm pretty sure this is like a variety action game. Like, I think there's like a driving stage, and then a side-scrolling action stage, and stuff like that, yada yada. Variety, and this is considered a very good game that I haven't spent a lot of time with myself. Wario's Woods is the last ever licensed NES game. This is a puzzle game where like you actually control Toad, not Wario, and you're trying to like move stuff around so that they match and eliminate each other. The rules are actually more complex. This is not so much of a pick-up-and-play puzzle game like a lot of them are, unfortunately. Wheel of Fortune. This is a pretty fun rendition of the popular game show. I played this a lot with my sister back in the day. My biggest complaint with this version is that the prize round doesn't give you enough time. Unless you figure out right away what the solution is, you're just not going to have time to input all the letters. Wild Gunman is another Nintendo light gun game. And this one is based on like there's like a timer, and then when the timer goes off, you draw your gun and shoot the dudes. You're supposed to like hold your zapper like on your waist like a real gunman would. Yeah, it's basically like a draw kind of game. It's not like anything really that amazing, but it is historically significant. We have Willow, which is based on a movie of the same name, and it's kind of Zelda-ish, and apparently it's pretty cool. I've never seen the movie, and I haven't played this game very much, but this game is apparently good. We have Wrecking Crew, which is a Nintendo, another pretty early Nintendo game where you play as Mario and you're trying to go through each level. The levels are vertical and they have ladders and stuff, and you're trying to destroy all the stuff in every level, and there are enemies and obstacles that are trying to ruin your day. We have Worm, Dream to the Center of the Earth, where you play as a female protagonist, which was kind of unusual back then. And I think this has like, I know it's a side-scrolling action game where you have a gun, surprise, surprise, but I'm pretty sure there's like vehicle levels or something in this one that make it a little different. I can't remember if it has like shoot 'em up levels or something. We're finally getting close to the end. We got Yoshi's Cookie, which is another puzzle game. This one's very different. It's hard to explain this game. Like there's like these cookies. There's a bunch of different cookies like in a square shape. And you control a crosshair, and you're trying to move a row or column of cookies at a time until they match up. And I believe this one has 2-player modes as well. Zen, the Intergalactic Ninja. This is actually a licensed game, and it's isometric diagonal point of view. It's an action game. I think it has platformer elements too. I haven't played it a lot. I think I just got this like a year ago or something. Zoda's Revenge. This is the sequel to Star Tropics, Zelda-inspired game by Nintendo. One of the very last Nintendo games they ever made. This only came out in North America, just like the original. And then, last but not least, we have Zombie Nation, which is a shoot-'em-up where you play as a giant severed head that shoots out like fireballs, I guess. And like you go through like New York City and other weird places like that. It's a very weird, bizarre, but amusing game. And gameplay controls kind of take getting used to. They're a little bit weird, but I enjoy this game. I intend to like try to beat it someday, although it's pretty difficult. And that's it. That is all of my loose, unboxed North American Super Nintendo games. I got it done in less than 37 minutes. That's pretty cool. I'm glad I was able to speed it up and rush through it that quick. Stay tuned. Famicom is coming up next.